I never wanted to live in a dorm. But it was my first year at university, and I had no choice. The campus was big, even too big. Old buildings, new buildings, a library, a gym, and 3 dormitories. I was assigned to Dorm C. It was the oldest dorm. And as they said during move-in, with character. At the time, I thought it was just a joke. The first days were normal. But by the third night, I started noticing something strange. There were 20 rooms on my floor. I knew that for sure because I checked the evacuation plan near the elevator. The rooms went like this: 301, 302, 303, and so on up to 320. Mine was 314. But every night when I came back from the library, I saw a different number, between 317 and 318. 317A. The first time I thought I just hadn't noticed it before, but the next day I checked on purpose. It wasn't there, just a wall, a plain white wall. I even ran my hand across it. No door, nothing. I laughed, blamed it on being tired. But the next night it was there again. A door, old, with a worn-out plate, 317A. I stopped, stared at it for a few seconds, and felt something strange, like this room didn't just appear, like it had always been there, just invisible during the day. I stepped closer. The door looked older than all the others on the floor. The handle was metal, old, and slightly scratched. I don't know why, but I pressed it. It didn't open, locked. I stepped back, and at that moment I heard a sound from inside, quiet, like someone moved a chair. I froze. 1 second, 2. Silence. I took a step back and quickly walked to my room. The next morning I told my roommate. She looked at me strangely. "We don't have a 317A. You just mixed it up." I showed her the evacuation plan. There really was nothing between 317 and 318. "See? That room doesn't exist." I nodded, but that evening I went to check again, and it was there again. 317A. The same door, the same number, and this time there was light under the door. A thin yellow line. I slowly crouched and looked through the gap. The light was moving like someone was walking inside, and then I heard a voice, quiet, unclear, but definitely not a TV. It was a person. I stood up quickly and stepped back. A strange feeling hit me. Fear. But not because someone was inside, because of something else. If this room doesn't exist, then who is inside? And at that exact moment, the door quietly clicked. Not loudly, but enough for me to understand. The lock turned from the inside. I froze, didn't breathe. The handle slowly went down. The door opened just a few centimeters. Darkness inside. I couldn't see a face, only a silhouette. Male. He didn't come out, just stood there and looked at me. I felt goosebumps run across my skin. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. The voice was calm, not aggressive, but wrong, like someone who wasn't used to talking to people. I didn't answer. "You're on the wrong floor," he added. I swallowed. "This room doesn't exist," I said. A few seconds of silence, then he answered, "It does." And the door slowly closed. Click. I stood there for a few more seconds, and then just walked away, fast, almost running. The next day, I decided to do one thing. I went to the dorm administration. A woman around 50 was sitting there. She looked like she had been working there for 100 years. "Do we have a room 317A?" I asked. She didn't even look up. "No." "Was there one before?" Now she looked at me, and for the first time, she seemed slightly tense. "No," she repeated, too quickly. I nodded. "Okay," and left. But now I was sure. She was lying. I went back to the floor and started looking more carefully. Walls, numbers, doors. And then I noticed one detail. Between 317 and 318 wasn't just a wall. It was slightly a different color, barely noticeable, and also a little colder to the touch. I pressed my palm against it and felt a slight vibration, like something was working behind it, or ventilation. But there was nothing like that anywhere else. I stepped back, and at that moment, the elevator doors opened. A guy from my floor walked out. I stopped him. "Hey, do you know what used to be here?" He looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Before the renovation. Did they change anything here?" He shrugged. "They say this floor was once closed off." I felt my heart beat a little faster. "Why?" "I don't know. I've only been here a year." He left, and I stayed standing there. The floor was closed. Why? That night I didn't plan to go back to that room. Seriously, I just wanted to ignore it. But around 1 a.m., I heard a sound from the wall, a quiet knock, then another one, like someone was knocking. I sat up in bed, listening. The knocking repeated 3 times. Pause, and again 3 times. I got up, slowly walked to the wall, and carefully knocked back. Once. Silence. And then a response from the other side. I jumped back. My heart was pounding like it was about to burst. It wasn't ventilation, not pipes. It was a person, and they were right behind the wall. I didn't sleep until morning, and I already knew. This wasn't a coincidence. This room was hidden on purpose, and the next day I decided to do what I shouldn't have done. Find a way inside. I didn't know exactly how to get inside, but I knew one thing. The door wouldn't work. He was there, and he didn't want to be found. So I started thinking differently. If the room exists, it must have another entrance. I went back to the evacuation plan, stared at it for a long time, and noticed one detail. The corridor was marked normally, but the thickness of the walls was strange. Between 317 and 318, there was more space than there should have been. I took my phone, took a picture, then opened the floor map in the university app, and something didn't match there either. Like a section was simply cut out. The next step was obvious. The basement. In old buildings, all utilities run through the bottom. I went down there in the evening. The basement was dim. It smelled like dust and metal. Long corridors, pipes, cables, and doors labeled staff only. I walked further, slowly, listening to every sound, and after a few minutes I found what I was looking for. A wall right under my room, and under the place where 317A should be. I ran my hand over it and felt warmth and a slight vibration. I stepped back and saw a small metal door, low, almost at floor level. A service hatch, no label, no number, just hidden. I tried to open it, locked, but the lock was simple. I looked around. No one. Took a hairpin, and after a few seconds, click. I opened the hatch. Inside was a narrow passage, very narrow, for cables, but a person could get through if they really tried. I stood there for a few seconds, looking into the darkness and understanding there was no way back, but still, I crawled inside. It was tight, very. I crawled slowly. My knees hurt. The air was heavy, and the further I went, the clearer I heard a sound, quiet, like electronics, and also voices. I stopped, froze, listened. There were several voices, male, and they didn't sound like people nearby, but like from speakers. I crawled a little further and saw light, a thin gap. I carefully moved closer and looked inside. I was right. It was a room, 317A, but it didn't look like a dorm room. There was no bed, no closet, nothing normal. Instead, there were monitors, many, on the walls, on tables, and on them were cameras. I looked closer and felt my heart start beating faster. Each screen showed different rooms in the dorm: kitchens, hallways, bedrooms, even bathrooms. Only wide shots, but still. It was full surveillance of the entire floor, and in the center of the room stood that man, the same one. He was sitting with his back to me, watching the monitors like a guard. But something was off. I was about to back away when suddenly on one of the screens, I saw myself, the camera from my hallway, me a few hours earlier, standing by the wall, looking at 317A. I held my breath, and at that moment, one of the monitors changed, and now it showed that same hatch, and the man slowly raised his head, like he already knew I was there. I froze, didn't breathe, didn't move, but it was too late. He turned and looked straight at the opening where I was. Our eyes met for a second. I pulled away, started crawling back, fast, trying not to make noise, but it was already clear. He saw me. I got out of the hatch, closed it, and almost ran down the basement corridor. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else, only my own steps. And one question in my head: what was that? I didn't go back to my room right away. I went outside, sat on the dorm steps. Cold air helped me come back to my senses. And then I started putting everything together. A room that doesn't exist, a hidden entrance, cameras, monitors, and a person watching. This wasn't random. This was a system. But the main question was different. Who made it? And why? I took out my phone, opened the university website again, and started searching the dorm's history. Dorm C built over 40 years ago, several renovations, and one record that caught my attention. Temporary closure of the third floor. Reason: technical modernization of security systems. Year 2008. I frowned. Security system? For a dorm? I started digging deeper. Forms, old discussions, and found one thread. Old, almost forgotten. Students wrote about strange things. Noise in the walls, electric issues, and cameras, but not official ones, hidden. I felt something tighten inside. This wasn't one man. This had been going on for years. And then I found a name. The one responsible for the renovation. Evan Cole. I opened the profile, former university employee, and fired a year after the renovation. No explanation. I went back to my room, closed the door, and only then realized one thing. If the system is still running, then the man in that room either works for someone or... I didn't finish the thought because I heard a sound from the hallway. Slow footsteps. They stopped at my door. I froze. And then someone knocked very quietly, 3 times. Pause. And again, 3. The same pattern. I didn't move, didn't answer. And then the voice behind the door said quietly, "Now you know." I felt cold run through my whole body. "And that's a problem," he added. And the door handle slowly started going down. The door opened. I stood still. Didn't run, didn't scream, just watched. He stood in the doorway, the same man, from the room. Now I could see him clearly, around 30. Normal appearance, no mask, no aggression. On the contrary, he looked calm, too calm. "You shouldn't have gone in there," he said. I didn't answer. "Who are you?" I asked. He paused for a second, as if deciding whether to speak. "I'm the one who watches," he replied. That made me angry. "That's not an answer." He sighed slightly and stepped into the room. I instinctively stepped back. "This is a study," he said. I froze. "What?" "Human behavior in a closed environment. Reactions, fear, loneliness." I didn't believe it. "You're joking?" "No," he said. "It's a university project." I felt everything inside twist. Cameras in rooms? Without permission? He looked straight at me. People behave differently when they know they're being watched. We needed the truth. That's illegal, I said. He smiled slightly. It was authorized. My heart tightened. By whom? He didn't answer. And then I said something I hadn't planned. Evan Cole. He stopped, and for the first time, his expression changed. You found the name, he said quietly. He started it, right? I said. And you continued? A few seconds of silence. They shut the project down, he said. Too risky. Too many questions. But you didn't stop, I said. He shook his head. Because it worked. It hit me. This is insane. It's data, he replied. I looked at the door, counted options, run, scream, but I knew. He didn't come just to talk. What are you going to do now? I asked quietly. He looked at me for a long time. That depends on you, he said. I understood. A choice. Either I stay silent or, people will find out, I said. He slowly nodded, like he expected that. Then you become part of the study, he said. I didn't understand immediately, and then he took out his phone and showed me the screen. My face. Right now. Recorded from a camera in my room. I froze. You think you were watching the system, he said. But actually, he paused. The system was watching you the whole time. Cold spread through my body. And you're the perfect subject, he added. I stepped back. No. He stepped forward, and at that moment, voices were heard in the hallway. Loud, clear. Campus security. Open the door. The man turned his head sharply. I didn't think, just acted. I pushed him into the hallway and shouted, Here. A few seconds of chaos, steps, shouts. They forced him to the ground. It ended quickly. His name wasn't what he said, and he wasn't an official part of the university. Not anymore. The project really existed, but it was shut down. After one of the students disappeared, Evan Cole, the man I found, was his assistant, and he decided to prove the project was worth continuing. The cameras were dismantled. The system was destroyed. Officially, but before everything was closed, I asked one question. How many people knew? And one of the staff members replied, More than you think. I moved out of the dorm, but sometimes I still catch myself thinking that someone is watching me, and the worst part, I'm no longer sure it's just paranoia.